Good Wednesday morning. Now, you may think that I've got a beautiful OTO cap with the OTO lamin on it. It, it I'm not fooling anybody with it. Okay, it's my Yankees cap here. And I double stick taped it on there to see what it would look like. So I didn't do a very good job of that. But anyway, I like the Yankees too. Okay, I remember, I believe it was the 1956 World Series game. We had just kind of moved to Nebraska. And that year in the World Series, the Dodgers were playing the Yankees. And my father had been a Yankee fan his whole adult life. And but in my 7-year-old, 8-year-old sense of rebellion, I was going to root for the Dodgers that year. And I even made a 50-cent bet, first and only bet I ever made, with one of my brother's older friends, and I lost. But anyway, I've been a baseball fan ever since. I don't keep track. I don't know who anybody's name is anymore or anything. I just love the worship service of a Major League Baseball game, or even any kind of a baseball game. I love the going to the temple of the stadium, and George Carlin pointed out that baseball stadiums are different than football stadiums. Even their names, they're parks, and I just love the summery. I love the smell of the grass, and anyway, I digress. Every morning, Constance and I watch Amy Goodman on Democracy Now! Now, our local television PBS station doesn't carry it. It did in Los Angeles and other civilized countries, civilized cities. But in Sacramento, they don't carry Democracy Now! It's a wonderful wonderful show, and it does detailed stories at major networks. Sort of, I just give a couple minutes to. It's an in-depth kind of thing. But I have to admit, the news lately is pretty damn depressing. And I've shared this piece of writing with you a couple times before, but today it seems most appropriate, and it's kind of what's weighing on my mind with all the genocide and unrest that's happening. And so I thought I would share it with you this morning. There's a book called The Cloud Upon the Sanctuary, and it was the book that was recommended to young Aleister Crowley by none other than Arthur Edward Waite himself. Crowley wrote Arthur Edward Waite and said, I don't know, I'm sure we can probably find the letter. I'm interested in Rosicrucianism and occultism and the Western whatever. And Arthur Edward Waite wrote him back, said, I first recommend that you read A Cloud Upon the Sanctuary. And it is I'm going to have to pronounce his name correctly, Karl von Eckartshausen, The Cloud Upon the Sanctuary. And the edition I'm reading from was actually translated and introduced by Arthur Edward Waite. So it was a little self-promotion for Waite to tell Crowley to read that. And I'm not going to read The Cloud Upon the Sanctuary, but I would really recommend that for like 99 cents, you get the Kindle edition that I'm about to read to you. Let's see if I can find the cover of it. I posted it. I introduced a series of classic works of magic and mysticism for Weiser in Magical Antiquarian Curiosity Shop series. There's my handsome picture on the front. Unfortunately, it's not a book, it's a Kindle book, but 99 cents for the book that lit a fire under Aleister Crowley is something you might want to look into downloading if you have a Kindle. Okay. Here is my introduction, okay, because I was the editor of this series. Here's my introduction, and it sort of gives voice to what I was mulling over this morning. And I've shared it with you before, probably quite recently, but I'm moved to share it with you again this morning. So this is the introduction to the Weiser Book Collection edition. Starts off with an epigraph from Arthur Edward Waite. The cloud upon the sanctuary has, I believe, always remained in the memory of a few, and is destined still to survive, for it carries with it a message of very deep significance to all those who look beneath the body of religious doctrine for the one principle of life which energizes the whole organism. Now, for Arthur Edward Waite, that was a remarkably short sentence, but it was a good one. And here's my few words. Even the most Pollyanna-ish among us will not deny that there is much unpleasantness in the world around us. Wars and disease, hatred and discord. There seems to be no limit to the crimes and atrocities our kind is capable of and willing to inflict upon each other. It's easy for us to disparage as evil the fundamental character of human nature, and ultimately resign ourselves to lives of quiet desperation, surviving day by means of our moment-to-moment success in choosing the lesser of two evils, or the lesser of evils, I say. Now, I got to digress for a second. We hear so much, well, it's human nature, or people defending extractive capitalism by saying, well, it's human nature to be greedy. Even my song, "A Little Greed is Healthy." Okay. And in Freemasonry, we are counseled and encouraged by the words that that tell us that a fund of science and industry is implanted in man for the best, most salutary, and most beneficent purposes. In other words, we're good at heart. But we hear all of this, it's human nature, okay? It's between the givers and the takers and them and us. But the fundamental nature of our kind is good. Or Dungeons and Dragons, a good neutral or something like that. Anyway, I digress. It is easy to grow cynical and discouraged when pondering the state of affairs on planet Earth. The nightly newscasts lay out a dinnertime smorgasbord of military conflicts, famines, civil unrest, genocide, I threw genocide in just now, and economic ruin. It is cold comfort to observe that there has never been a season in all of recorded history that's been free of such suffering, injustice, and shameful display of man's inhumanity to man. One can argue quite convincingly that civilization, indeed all human enterprise, has always been and forever shall be driven by the cruel, ignoble motives of the greed and avarice of the human heart. It's also not too much of a jump in logic to assume that all this unpleasantness, which we are helpless to resist or vanquish, is the result of a master plan, hatched by villains whose embrace of absolute evil has reached perverted spiritual dimensions. Everywhere we turn, on the internet, in the newspapers, on television and radio, conspiracy theories and theorists assail us with plots and intrigues hatched by governments and industries and secret societies that run the governments and the industries, who allegedly use information as disinformation to confuse and befuddle us, making us pawns in some monstrous plan for world domination, or space alien cuisine, or something transcendently naughty. Ironically, many of these conspiracy theories and theorists seem to have fallen victim to their own distrust of the obvious, and with the wagging finger of accusatory paranoia, have singled out the very organizations and movements most vocally opposed to those evils they fear and despise. Such is the danger of trying to out-disinform the disinformed. Thus, the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, and the Illuminati, societies and movements that were founded upon the most admirable ideas of freedom of thought and the brotherhood of man, are now the, quote, agents of Satan, or the monolithic church, or the world bankers, or the Jews, or reptilian space aliens. At the same time, unless we have allowed ourselves to be completely overwhelmed by the depressing conditions wrought by the world's evils, we're forced to acknowledge what appears to be a glimmer of evidence of evolving consciousness. In particular, the breathtaking advances in human thoughts, arts, sciences, quantum leaps that in a very few short decades have elevated the conversation from arguments over how many days it took God to create the heaven and earth, or to whether or not a particle traveling faster than the speed of light moves backwards in time. The theosophical and magical movements of the late 19th century optimistically latched onto the same idea as the conspiracy theorists that such a master plan does indeed exist, but that it's good rather than evil, that it is facilitated by enlightened beings who have transcendently good motives, and that humanity advances and evolves spiritually, at least partially because of their secret efforts on our behalf. Such is the premise and the promise of the cloud upon the sanctuary. The inimitable occultist, Aleister Crowley, Arthur Edward Waite, they would both hate me for making that mistake. The inimitable occultist and writer Arthur Edward Waite, who suggested the text to a young and impressionable Aleister Crowley, offers us a most thorough and erudite introduction to this edition of the classical work. And it's with particular pleasure that I present it to you now. And that was Lon Milo DuQuette, Costa Mesa, 2012 is when I wrote that. And I apologize if I've shared that with you quite a few times on our morning talks, but it is, at least in my opinion, important for us to hear as we're consciously or unconsciously choosing or selecting our input of propaganda. Anyway, that's what I have for us today. And I know it was kind of a downer, but nevertheless, I believe that there is a fund of science and industry implanted in man for the best, most salutary, and most beneficent purposes. And I want to be on board with that. Till tomorrow, continue to be good to yourself, be good to each other. Do what thou wilt, shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will.